Will democracy survive in the next couple of years?
And essentially, we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center in Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Firefly Credit Union, with locations throughout the Twin Cities, has proudly served Minnesotans since 1925. Firefly guides its members forward by delivering customized financial solutions to improve their lives in all aspects of banking. Firefly Credit Union, they light the way with life illuminated. Edina Eye, Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years. Now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services but dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Welcome once again to Access to Democracy. We're back with one of our favorite and most frequent guests, I will say, over 22 years, probably has been here as much as anybody, but he is now worldwide in terms of his fame. Paul Anderson retired 7 years ago from the Minnesota Supreme Court. His opinions were read every place and respected every place. Since that time, he has written more, he has appeared more, and he's a man who was active in Republican politics, appointed twice to different courts, including the Minnesota Supreme Court by former Governor Carlson. And he has, I would say, moved to the center, perhaps, in terms of his philosophy, but is respected.
I'm going to correct you there, Alan. I was in the center when I started out. You can figure out where I've moved since that. But no, I'm serious. I mean, I was thinking about that today. There were any number of centrist Republicans who I identified with. I mean, I think of George Romney. I think of Jacob Javits. I think of Mark Hatfield. I think of Percy out of Illinois, Thurston Morton out of Kentucky. There were any number of these. And by the way, you know, Thomas Dewey in 1948 was better on the issue of racial equality than the Democrats. I mean, Humphrey got a lot of publicity because the Democrats were so much troglodytes on this issue. So, I mean, there are and there were centrist Republicans, Eisenhower, Lincoln Republicans. I was one of those.
Well, in your many articles, and there are some favorite Republicans that I had also, including Jacob Javits, which may come as a surprise, and John Lindsay, among others. But interesting of late, and you've had so many articles and so many interviews, and I see that you are a big fan of Mitch McConnell, the certainly Senate's leading Republican. And so I want to read a couple of the things that you have said recently about Mitch McConnell, and we can take it from there. Speaking to Laurie Sturdivant on October 18th, you said that McConnell is eroding the legitimacy of the courts. They are creating in the minds of many people that the courts are not just another bunch of politicians up for sale. Now, another thing you said recently about McConnell in the Minnesota Post, very recently, as a matter of fact, Uh, when Mitch McConnell retires, will he turn to his grandchildren and say, I accumulated great power, but I did not use it well. I facilitated the demise of America's middle class. I deprived persons of health coverage during a pandemic. I stacked the courts with ideologues. I sat on the sidelines when a pandemic ran rampant. I condoned practices that separated children from their parents and put them in cages. I enriched an elite few and myself at the expense of others. I think that tells us a little bit about
Well,
what you think.
see, the antecedent to that in the article, and I said that, Mitch McConnell is close to my age, and at this stage of your career, you ask that question, what I call the legacy question, supposedly theoretically put to you by a grandchild or a mentee of 2 generations below you. Said, what did you do to make the world better? And I don't think that Mitch McConnell has done the things that allow him to answer that question in a principled way. And that's why I listed some of the things that he has been, pushing and involved in. I mean, the early Mitch McConnell had a modicum of good government to him. You go back to some of his earlier statements. He was a fan of former Senator Sherman Cooper from Kentucky, and he bought into much of that. Now he is so much like the current breed of surely Republicans in the sense that power is an end in of itself. And whatever you can do to exercise your power in the way you want, it's justifiable. And I just can't stomach that.
And I guess what really turned me off in particular was the hypocrisy about the Merrick Garland appointment to the Supreme Court, where Obama was deprived of making that appointment. And now, unfortunately, we have a reckless, I believe, completely unhinged president who has had the opportunity to appoint 3 members, 3 right-wing ideologues, the latest one being probably the most right-wing and least qualified, to the Supreme Court, a court of only 9, where they definitely have swung the majority in favor of very conservative positions, which can set the court back. So I'd like your opinion on McConnell's conduct in that regard, and then we can talk about the lower courts.
Yeah, there are multi-facets to that question or the proposition you set forward. Let's go back to Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell's hypocrisy on that issue created great difficulty during the second time the Barrett appointment. I mean, he made up Biden rule. And anybody who says there's a Biden rule and says that there's principle based, they are wrong. There is no Biden rule. I wrote an editorial about it that speaks to it. Biden basically said on the in January, no, it was in June of, I think it was 1992. But anyway, he said, often Supreme Court resignations occur around the 1st of July. The Congress should not act on any appointment until after the political conventions were over. He didn't say that they should delay it. And in fact, in that year, there were more federal judges positions filled, Court of Appeals and in the district court, up until the end of September, early part of October, than any other year. So there was no Biden rule. But anyway, that's what McConnell said there was. So now you come up to the situation this year, and he completely reverses course. There is a certain part of me that says, well, the president is the president. He's got a right to nominate someone, and if they can confirm, then fine, except that it was such a blatant hypocritical move that it loses all credibility. By the way, Barrett, I think, is only the second justice ever to be confirmed to the United States Supreme Court without a single vote from the opposing party. I
That's
believe I
correct.
don't. The name escapes me. The first justice who was able to do that. He never actually sat on the court because he died before he could sit on the court. I mean, it's just what McConnell is doing. He's giving. Excuse the way I speak, though, but he's almost like he's giving the middle finger of his hand to the Constitution and says, "I don't care. I don't care. Whatever I want and I can do, I'm going to do."
Well,
And that to me is quite offensive.
Garrett had a very sparse track record to begin with. She hasn't been
I mean, Barrett, you mean?
Barrett, yeah.
Yeah.
She hasn't been an attorney that long. She certainly has not been a judge that long. She certainly doesn't have a track record that we can look at in terms of distinguished opinions or philosophy. She's certainly had membership in some questionable ideological organizations, and it remains to be seen whether she's going to rise to the occasion of her position in the Supreme Court or not. And we have Kavanaugh and Gorsuch who preceded her, which swung really along with Alito, who has become really more right-wing as he aged, and Clarence Thomas, that can really swing any vote in the Supreme Court if they vote together.
Let me quickly address the things you brought up. First of all, McConnell did not want to give Merrick Garland any kind of a hearing because he was so well qualified, so esteemed in the profession, whatever. It would have been very difficult to vote against him after a hearing when he came off as well as he did. Barrett, I do believe, I do agree with you that she's not qualified for the highest court, but I'm going to give her something. She was a student of Minnesota Federal District Court Judge Patrick Schultz, okay? And he said that she is one of the most brilliant students he has ever had in class. So don't dismiss her on the fact that she doesn't have the intellectual horsepower to handle a position on the Supreme Court. What is more problematic is her ideology. I mean, this shows you something. She's very bright, but how can someone that bright have the position she has on climate change? You know, a failure to recognize scientific information. That is quite concerning about, you know, I mean, and Alan, I mean, I've served on the court and experience does matter. You know, there's a process. Intelligence alone is not enough to be in a position like that. I talk to young people about how they go about becoming the smartest person in the room. And I said, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be the person with the highest intellectual horsepower, but you have to have the skills, the focus, the ability to bring coalitions together. And I said that much of that comes with experience. So getting experience is one of the ways that you can be the smartest person in the room. She basically does not have what I would say the background of the experience that we want on the Supreme Court. And I'm going to make a point here with respect to Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. I think that they fall short. And I think it was Kavanaugh, recent opinion. One of the things I learned early on the court, and my colleague Alan Page knew this also, is you make sure that your opinion is factually accurate and technically correct. Now, Alan got on the court partly because, you know, his notoriety and name, because he was an All-American, All-Pro football player. But Alan knew that. He said that, you know, they're going to go after me. And I can't stop them from going after me with how I decide cases, but I won't give them any cheap shots. My opinions are going to be well drafted. They're going to be technically correct. And he was assiduous in making sure that his opinions were correct. I did the same thing. Kavanaugh recently released an opinion that was quite sloppy, actually. Technical errors and
It
whatever.
became a laughing stock for a lot of people because of the fact that it was so inaccurate and sloppy.
I mean, but now maybe he'll learn. I'm being criticized for that. But this goes with experience and background is that what is required of someone in that position. And I am worried about the quality of these three appointments, their lack of background, and some of the sloppiness. I want to address Alito. And I'll address Thomas. Thomas is kind of unique in a way. He's a neoconservative libertarian. He kind of plays in his own sandbox, okay? Part of coalitions, but he's not so much interested in building them. Alito, on the other hand, he's become very robust lately. I mean, he's feeling his oats. He's feeling that he can take the leadership of the court away from Roberts.
It's clear that that's what he's been trying to do recently. And if anything, he's driving the chief judge more to work with the three more liberal judges.
Yeah, but Gorsuch is doing somewhat the same thing. I mean, you can see that Gorsuch and Roberts have kind of clashed on a few things. I think that, is that Gorsuch is feeling his oats as a young justice. But let me talk about Chief Justice Roberts, okay? He's more conservative than I like. You and I don't like what he did on Citizens United, and then is the equation of corporations being persons and money being free speech. But Roberts is more of a classic conservative in the model of a Sandra Day O'Connor, a Justice Powell, even a Justice Kennedy, okay? And he is the chief, and he does understand the need to protect the reputation of the Supreme Court, and he's worked very hard at that in order to get some reasonable coalitions. And by the way, he is a very fine human being. He was the roommate of a fellow church member of mine when he was in prep school. He was a law review colleague of an attorney I associated with. Both of them speak about how ethical is and what a class person is. I don't have a problem with.
I think there's never been a question about that.
No, not at all.
He's also very concerned about the fact that in years to come, the legacy will be talk about the Roberts Court and what was the Roberts Court and what effect did it have on American jurisprudence. And this brings me to a point of an article that I wrote a couple of years ago where you and I disagreed, where I said it might be necessary to, quote, pack the court, to change the court to 15 members who sit for 18-year terms and rotate on cases much the same as they do in the circuit courts. And you disagreed with me.
Not completely. I disagreed with some parts of it.
Yeah, pretty vociferously at the time. And I wonder what your feeling is about that today in view of what's happened to the court.
First of all, right out of the box, I'm going to criticize you for how you framed the issue. One of the things as an appellate court judge and advocates, you got to frame the issue properly. By saying packing the court is an inaccurate way to frame this issue. You can use packing the court when you talk about what Mitch McConnell has done to the federal judiciary. There is basically a classic case of how he has packed the judiciary with ideologues who are somewhat narrow-minded. So don't talk about packing the court. What you're talking about here is the concept is that are we going to do something that brings the Supreme Court more back into balance with where the thinking of the American people is. So I'm not going to buy into the packing of the court because that's the wrong way to frame the issue.
I apologize, Your Honor. I'll rephrase the question.
Okay, yeah. But it's a bit of a moot question right now for a couple of reasons. One, they thought that the Democrats would take over the Senate. They didn't. if they win both seats in Georgia, it could be on the docket again. But you see, Republicans don't like that concept. Independents don't like that concept, and many Democrats don't like it. And so, if they win in Georgia, even right up to that point, I would say that there's not going to be the momentum to add any additional judges to the court. But if the Supreme Court becomes rogue, gets very aberrant in its jurisprudence, then you're going to see a change of mind by the people and say is that wait, they don't reflect our thinking. Now, if you're going to add members to the court, I do agree with you that there should be term limits on justices. 18 years is a good time limit, and rotate every 2 years so it doesn't become so political. If I were to add justice to the court, I would do it very cautiously and in a limited manner. I'd probably say add 2 more justices who are term limited, in the sense that they will be appointed to serve for 10 or 12 years, and then their terms will sunset. That would change the balance on the court. It would put Roberts back in power again, which I'm only modestly comfortable with, but I trust him to protect the institution of the Supreme Court from the most aberrant behavior of those other 4 who could go rogue.
I trust him also, except in Citizens United, among other cases, where I think that he really did great damage to our society with that decision. And I certainly would like to see it reversed.
If I had a chance to sit down with Roberts, that would be the one question that I would ask, is that, do you have any regrets about Citizens United?
And as I said, that was quoted by the Star Tribune in our article, the article they did about us, when talking to Pat Anderson, I've never seen a corporation in a maternity room, so that, or a maternity ward, when they say that corporations are people. Corporations are not people. And I think what we've seen in the last several years proves that more than ever. Even though some have a conscience and some have been involved in a lot of charitable endeavors, they are not people. The people are the voters, the population, the citizens, simply because non-citizens can't vote. Those are the people.
I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot here. I mean, you listen carefully to some of the things that Biden is saying. One of the things, maybe a little bit under the radar scope, he basically came out and said that the concept of too big to be held accountable, too big to be convicted, is no longer the operative mandate in my administration. No, if you do wrong, no matter how big you are, be prepared to be held accountable. And that goes to this whole behavioral thing, whether corporations are persons and how you treat them.
Well, moving on from that, and I think we can really continue the argument about the Supreme Court, or the discussion
It's
about.
not an argument, Alan. It's a discussion. And notice how I got you to move. You're reframing the issue now.
But you brought up the lower courts, and what McConnell has done with the lower courts is give lifetime appointments in the district courts and the circuit courts to a bunch of people who come out of the Federalist Society, who were not endorsed by bar associations or the National Bar Association, the American Bar Association. And what I would like to see Congress do is increase the size of the lower courts to certainly make them more compatible with not only their necessities. Some of them really are overworked at the moment, but to have more judges available in each of the 13 circuit courts and in the district court.
Well, your objective is not achievable if, in fact, the Senate remains in be the fiefdom of Mitch McConnell. Okay, it won't happen under those circumstances. But I want to talk two things: the problem and the solution. You articulate a good problem. Now, not all of the appointees that Trump made were bad. But it's an inordinately high percentage of them who are inexperienced, they're ideological, and we'll just have to wait to see how they ultimately.
We're having some trouble with your microphone.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, I was talking down a little bit. But anyway, not all of them are bad. But I have talked to some of my colleagues on the federal bench, and they are quite concerned, if not appalled, at the lack of knowledge of some of these appointees, not knowing some of the most basic concepts of what you need to know as a judge. Now, here's an interesting thing. As an appellate judge, I mean, you can have the cover of the process that can protect you from some of your inefficiencies. As a federal district court judge, where you're in the courtroom, you're right on. I mean, your inadequacies show up. If you don't know what a motion in limine is, I mean, you're going to hear gasps from the attorneys and my gosh, I mean, that's some of the most basic stuff. And some of these appointees don't know some of the most basic things that need to be known by somebody who's in a trial court and is presiding over it. That is of concern. The solution, I mean, I'm more reluctant than you are to add, persons and to put more judges on. We'll have to see. It's a moot question right now. But can I ask one other thing here?
Yeah, we have about a minute.
Yeah, I want to talk about changes that are coming.
Yeah.
New president, new U.S. district attorneys. We're going to get a new U.S. district attorney here in Minnesota. We're going to get new directives in the FBI so they no longer purge people they deem to be disloyal. But one of the key appointees, and you got to watch this, is the Sovereign District of New York. No, I mean the Southern District of New York, which is Manhattan. They sometimes call it the Sovereign District.
It's one of the most independent districts.
And Trump is very worried about that. I mean, he interviewed candidates for U.S. District Attorney for that position. That's really unheard of. He knows the power that rests in that independent office. So pay attention to what they do. Also pay attention to what the New York Attorney General does.
Okay, I will do that. I want to thank you so much for, again, spending time and educating us. And I might say that maybe I'll pass your good wishes on to my classmate from Syracuse University Law School, who received his JD in 1968 when I received mine, although I wasn't in his class. Unfortunately, they treated me as though I was a class by myself, but
well, you still are.
But in any event, we're very proud of Syracuse Orange in terms of our first president, and we look for good things from him, from you, and to continuing this discussion in the future. Paul, thank you so much.
It's hard to get on your show these days. You know, you're in great demand.
We'll go off the air. I'll talk to you about that when we go off the air. Avi, take us out.
It's a pleasure, always.